Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics here at Mid-America Christian University. I am here for our Week 3 wrap-up lecture, and we will be looking at our discussion questions submitted by the students in COM 2143, Digital Media Literacy. And so, just a quick recap, we are tackling 3 different texts this week in conversation with one another to varying degrees. The most exterior of the 3 being Writing Well in the 21st Century from Linda Spencer, as well as our main text for this course, Marcel Danissi's Popular Culture Introductory Perspectives, and now the integration, starting in Week 3, of a book we will explore in a couple of different classes in the communication major, Henry Jenkins, Sam Ford, and Joshua Green's Spreadable Media, Creating Value and Meaning in a Networked Society. And so, as always, we have students that have gone through the readings, put together some insightful questions, and we are selecting from those the types of questions that generate the best type of online discourse to further stimulate conversation in an asynchronous fashion. So let's jump right into to the questions we have time for today, and we'll try to fit as many in as we can, at least until old Pappy G's brain gets tired and he needs his nap. Okay, so let's start off with Megan Denon, and she has some really rich, insightful questions as always, and trying to see if they work best jumping to the question or if it's something we need to kind of tease out. Spoiler alert, have a tendency this week, we might get a little bit verbose, right? We're just expressing things. We're going to go over it here. Okay. So, starting with the Writing Well text. Megan asks let's see. There have been a handful of very high-profile incidents in journalism in recent years where typically very reliable news sources reported false or misleading information. So even with tools to obtain facts, there can still be missteps. Absolutely. How do we handle an incident where we cited a reliable source for factual evidence that ended up being compromised? And if we're trying to situate this conversation within the context of the student experience, I think a couple of ways we could think about it is if it were on a blog space, something like that, an online forum where you are reporting information, you have the access, the agency to be able to go in, update that to the correct information, and or fix old or broken links. We tend to see this now, the expiration of hyperlinks, whereas perhaps a former source built into the site no longer functions correctly. And so that is something that if we want to go in and take care of and fix that up. You will notice if you all, for those of you all that read internet news regularly, whether it's a site like USA Today or the Washington Post, they go in and they will add addendums, or they will add perhaps even asterisk down to the bottom of the news article any updates necessary. So sometimes they either leave in or they correct as they go, but they're even open and honest about, hey, we made this correction on such and such date as new information was made available. And so I feel like that's one of the strengths is that the more open and accountable we hold ourselves, the more trustworthy, the more we invite that kind of response from others. That's how you build trust, right? Forthrightness. I think the problem is we have a lot of media figures, talking heads that are all about grandstanding, and so their whole position of, power and social influence is based on, I can never admit wrong, I will never, back away from this situation or my former position, no matter how outdated or politically incorrect it is, and what have you. So a lesson for us: if it's on social media, delete the post, delete it, right? And that's not to say it actually permanently went away, but we can remove it from future circulation, right? At least try to minimize the damage there. The lesson in all of this, when writing or even before you think about sharing something, the ultimate lesson, and I speak from experiences, slow down. Okay, slow down and verify through multiple sources before posting something, especially some of these politically charged articles, or as much as we don't like to over discuss issues like the crises we sometimes face and tragic events, whether it's local or national, even international events, right? They're really provocative circumstances that take place sometimes. If you can work to verify some of the information on those posts, particularly when they're live, when fresh information is coming in every few minutes, that saves a lot of trouble and helps to lower the sense of creating mass panic with people. So that's really important for us to think about. A follow-up comment from Megan is posed in this way. In the same vein of defense, but not in regard to plagiarism, how do you defend an idea, theory, or observation as original when someone else is bound to have a similar thought process? This is a natural internal reaction we often have. For example, when I wrote about the use of color in the Game of Thrones series, this is not necessarily an original observation. Could have Googled it, taken a concept, and so on. In reference to our previous week's message board posts, we had a healthy conversation going about the use of color in programming and how and what color palettes and color templates can articulate and a sort of visual communication. The question comes, how is this defended or appropriately discussed with a professor who might think you plagiarized a concept? So, in other words, and we had a couple other questions along this same line of thought. So I love that when our thoughts and our questions are in conversation with one another. But the question essentially is, how do we avoid plagiarism, or how do we trust ourselves, or how do we make comments without the fear of possibly trespassing on someone else's ideas or theories? And I think there's room for a couple of comments here. You can still have a unique idea or insight, and it could be something someone else has conceptualized previously, and that's okay. We go through those types of stages. The trick is to use their evidence to validate your claim. So in other words, embrace that someone is writing about something else or about the same idea or ideas, because that's validation that, okay, what I'm talking about is important, right? It's circulating. People are interested in this phenomenon, and so it deserves our attention. And other people may have similar ideas, and let's bring them into conversation here. So that way, now I'm updating information. I form my own thoughts, and then I add, the citation of someone else's work or ideas into it. And then maybe now it's springboarding and providing me new ways to think about what's left that hasn't been discussed or thought about. Okay? Does that make sense? You all really chewed down well on that's not a phrase, that is not real grammar, so we call it botch of the day, chewed down on. On page 264 of Popular Culture Introductory Perspectives, Chapter 11, Danesi writes in reference to McLuhan's writings, quote, "It provides snapshots that allow us to think more profoundly about the content they espouse," end quote. This immediately gives me the image of a meme or image quote, which are so popular throughout social media. I think I probably share an image quote or meme at least once a day with the same concept in mind. And you're not the only one that drew this parallel this week between what Danesi was talking about and applying it back to some of our social media trends in recent years. Very interesting work there, and I think it's John that was commenting on that. But the question comes in, let's see. In sharing the snapshot of a thought, I hope to spur myself and others who see it into a deeper thought process about the artifact. So now, Megan, you're talking about this process of sharing with purpose, with intent. And thus the question arises, do you think that memes and image quotes actually achieve a deeper thought process from the viewer and or sharer? I think it's completely dependent on the person or persons, and it's a decent amount of people do not want to critically think. Like, period. End of sentence. This is a real awakening for me, even in considering in recent years, feeling, oh, we're all trying to climb the ladder of knowledge and learning and information. Nope. A lot of people just want what they want and just put it right in front of me. Let me take it in. I'm done with it. Move on to the next thing. That critical thinking applies there. An example recently, I've read several think pieces about this. Why the updated Blade Runner film, Blade Runner 2049, it has performed poorly at the box office versus the massive wave of positive critical reviews, right? And got this strong critical reception upon release, and yet audiences haven't flooded to it the way they do, the Marvel movies or whatever. Incidentally, something you can note between those movies is, even though some of the Marvel films tend to get longer and longer, I mean, they're right at that threshold of 2.5 hours. Blade Runner's a touch longer. By the time you go in, sit down, credits and all that, I mean, it's a full 2:45 to 3 hour block. And judging from your video responses last week, we are not into immense, sustained periods in a movie theater, collectively, respectfully. And so, but this is a movie that has a lot slower pacing. And there are points of ambiguity that challenge the audience member to think about it critically and assess it. And sometimes we don't like that. Some audiences, some consumers, they don't want to have to overthink things. They're not syncretic in that way. They want it straightforward and just give it to me. And so I think we can approach memes the same way. And probably a great many people are just wanting to pass it. So are we just taking proverbial sound bites and passing them along without any real critical thought processes regarding their content? Yes, that is entirely possible for a large number of people. And so, that becomes that danger of information saturated societies, and how news can just can morph into or translate into news information. And information can be rudderless, as we'll see shortly. I've got an excerpt I'm going to share upcoming. In the meantime, we have more video lecture. We are just getting started. You have plenty of time to go to the snack stand, fill up that tub of popcorn, etc., gummy bears. Google that gummy bears video first. No, wait, don't do it. And then come back here tons more questions. It's a Mailbag Monday.